So what are a couple things that you kind of advise at this time of the year, whether it's like as part of kind of the end of the year process or just planning for something in like January that they should run with, or sprint towards?
I hate this whole notion of like, let's hibernate for the end of the year, because that's a great time to be planning for 2025
Right.
in this instance. So two things I would say, like if you're a law firm right now and you're thinking of doing the big sleep from Thanksgiving until January 1, I would be looking at, so first thing I would do, I would review like budget to actual over the course of the last year. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that is from January 1 to December 1. Because everybody projects things, but nobody goes back and looks and says, was I correct in what I was projecting?
Yeah.
You may be largely correct, but everybody misses things. And projections are always educated guesses. So that's the first thing I would do. And if that's something that you're uncomfortable doing on your own, and you have an accountant that you work with, ask the accountant to do it for you as well. So
you're mostly talking about like financial projections, right? Just basically, we expected to make this amount
I'm not
of money.
talking about that yet, just budget for now. But that's the next thing I want to talk about. So the first thing I would look at is like budget to actual. Like what did we say we were going to pay out in terms of costs, and what did we actually pay out? And then the second thing is, to your point, I'm spending time building revenue projections for 2025, which is a highly beneficial activity that most attorneys don't engage in. And I'm also looking at like, if I did revenue projections last year, how close was I? Did I hit my expectations? Was I wrong on certain things? The reason I like law firms doing revenue projections is that it forces them to do other things. So to be able to make projections about what you're going to do in the new year, you have to have a rate sheet. So you need to know what you charge or what you're going to make on specific cases. You have to build a marketing plan, because if you try to make more money, get more clients, you have to know how you're going to do that. You may have to develop metrics to incentivize people to make more money by bringing in more clients to get them to do what they need to do. And sometimes that's just like, hey, maybe we need a new workflow so that we can process our cases faster. So this whole notion of figuring out like, if I'm going to make 20% more in 2025, how does that functionally happen? That has this massive cascading effect about all the things you should be doing in your law firm. So those are two of the activities I would be focusing on in November, December, if it were me and I was running a practice.
Yeah. How much time do you think, would you allocate to, like an activity like that, just in terms of, creating a forecast? Because I feel like in my head, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, where would I even start? And I mean, I kind of know, I know now, because I've gone through it with, accountants and people like who love that stuff and specialize in it. But like, what's a, kind of like practical amount of time that you would suggest doing that? Or, how would you go about that with an accountant, just kind of get the ball rolling, or at least knock out, kind of one of those.
I like people to own the process. So I don't think this is like you hand it over to the accountant. It's like, all right, whatever you say, buddy. I checked off this thing on my list. I did it. I might even do, if you've never done it before, I might do a first draft on my own. And if it's not something you do in your practice regularly, I might take a retreat day, right? So I might consider like getting an Airbnb for myself on a Saturday, just hanging out there in the hammock and just working it out. And like having like heavy focus time. So this is not, I'm going to work on my revenue projections while simultaneously watching something on Netflix or simultaneously responding to emails. Like really think about it and spend some time on it. And I would probably take a day to do it. And even if you're not figuring out what other ramifications spin off of that immediately, like you are getting the revenue projections down. And then you're starting to think about, okay, what other things do I need to accomplish to actually make this happen? And then you can figure out those other things later. That's perfectly fine.
That makes sense. Okay. I think that's really helpful. And what is once you kind of get that squared away, is there anything else that you would kind of you'd want to tackle as you go into 2025? Maybe even just
So
general, maybe even less process oriented, and kind of continuing with our, a little bit of the kind of AI discussion we had previously, which, is like what maybe are what's a big trend that you kind of see? I mean, I think AI is a big one. So, I mean, would you say like, yeah, I advise all my clients to, spend 1 hour a month kind of getting to know AI and like playing around with it, trying to figure things, some ways
yes,
they can implement it.
yeah, it's interesting. So like I generally don't do that in terms of like I don't have like a program that I run out for everybody per se. Like I'm very much into like trying to take clients where they are and being like, okay, what are your needs for this year? And like in terms of this topic, like I don't even think we need to go back to AI. Like the thing I would be thinking about is, do I have any goals or metrics in the firm that I'm using aside from like just base revenue? Like everybody wants to make more money. And if I
Yeah.
talk to a lawyer and they're like, I'm like, what's your goal? They're like, I want to make more money. I'm like, well, oh, tell me something I don't know. Shock. You want to make more money out of your business? Wow. What an insightful way to address this. But I'm talking about like specific goals. So like, do you have other goals for the firm that can relate back to revenue? And do individuals have goals for the firm as well?
Yeah.
So this could be, okay, we've done our revenue projections. We want to get 5 more clients from our website each year. Okay, so what do we need to do to make that happen? Do we need to change our website in some way? What are the functional things we're going to do for that? So that's potentially a goal. Okay, we want to increase our revenue by increasing our case volume. So what do we need to do to make us to allow us to move through cases faster?
Yeah.
Do we need to get through the disbursement phase quicker if we're a personal injury firm? Do we need to get somebody from a signing meeting to a design meeting faster if we're a estate planning firm? How do we do that? And then who owns that process? Like, is that me, the attorney, who's moving that ball forward? Do I have somebody who's a paralegal in the firm, who's a case mover, who's going to do that for me? And are we tracking that information? Who's responsible for tracking the information? Who's responsible for reporting on it? Like, that's the kind of thing I would focus on. Creating universal KPIs for the firm and individual KPIs, because I've seen this too. Like, you can't have firm KPIs and also no KPIs for individuals, because what happens is like everybody's like, oh yeah, we had to do that, but I don't think that was my job because it was never assigned to me. And if nobody's assigned a job, it doesn't become everybody's job, which is what a lot of people think. It becomes nobody's job. So I'm a big believer in like firm-wide KPIs, individual KPIs.
Yeah.
If you don't like the term KPIs, call them metrics. But that's the other thing I would be developing once I've done the revenue projections, once I have a budget, once I have a sense of what my profit's going to be that year, once I look at accounts receivable. Like, let me get the financial stuff done, and then let me put some goals on top of that, like actual discrete goals to move forward.
Yeah. And I think one thing I would just tack on top of that is once you have an idea of what those are, or a couple that you want to look at, go ahead and put a recurring calendar event on your calendar, right?
Yes.
And so even when we have it on a calendar, it's still a challenge because maybe we're putting, kind of like putting out a fire, or like, something else kind of demands the attention. And so it's, it's so easy to set those and then forget them, if you don't have that kind of locked in time where you're forced to with it.
Yeah, it's a discipline question for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Very helpful. Do you have 60 to 90 seconds for a lightning round, since you gave me a fun one when I was on your show?
Right.
So
yeah, I love lightning rounds. Hit me up.
Okay, so we're now entering the lightning round portion of the podcast with Mr. Jarred Correia. So, all right, number one, hard hitter right out of the gate. Who is the bigger legal influencer, Kim Kardashian or Jarred Correia?
Oh, me, clearly. Legal? Yeah. Have I told you about my fragrance? No, I don't have a fragrance.
That'd be cool. She's doing a lot of like, well, I don't know much, but she's getting into jails. She's
I had no idea. Oh,
Really?
if Kim Kardashian is actually doing something in the legal space, then she's absolutely more influential than I am already.
No, she's actually like getting. She's been a big advocate for like prison reform
Oh,
and
right.
stuff like that. Check it out.
All right, so I amend my prior answer.
it's a
It's
good
her.
redeeming quality, for her. So,
Good, good.
okay, what practice area is the biggest pain to deal with?
Oh, from a consulting side?
Yeah,
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Um, I'm gonna say immigration
interesting. Okay.
because it's really complex. There's an absurd amount of forms, and sometimes there's language barriers with clients. Sometimes there's
Yeah,
cultural barriers with clients, and there are a lot of ethics complaints in that space. That is a
yeah,
really tough practice area to be in. So, and there are a lot of people who are very successful at it, and simultaneously, it's like a really tough area to consult in. But I enjoy it. I like a challenge.
interesting. Okay, I go PI. I would say PI.
All right,
It's
that's fair. That's fair.
like they're all like riverboat gamblers, and like want to pay like 50, $1,000 and get like 2 million in payouts. So
That is true. That is true.
okay, who's worse, legal marketers or legal consultants?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say legal consultants. I'm gonna throw myself in the boat here. I just hate I mean, I'm not a fan of like the Tony Robbins style of stuff, and I
Mindset
don't
shift.
like mindset. Like everybody's over promising. It's just like not in my wheelhouse at all, and I
Yeah,
don't like it. Like everybody's got like, oh, how many people are like the 8-figure law firm, the 7-figure law firm? Like to me, as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, my whole posture is like every law firm is different. I said before, lawyers aren't special and the processes aren't necessarily special, but like every lawyer is different. Every managing attorney is different. They have different ideas about how they want their practices to run, what they want to achieve. And this whole
yeah.
notion of like, we get your mindset right and you're going to be a billionaire, like that doesn't actually work for most people. So I like to really dive into like, what are your goals? Let's try to achieve those specific goals and move forward on those. And I'm legal consultants, I would say by far. Like legal marketers like yourself, I know a lot of good legal marketers. I would say, especially the legal marketing firms that marketing firms that focus on law. I generally have really good experience with those folks, but
Yeah.
the consultants some of the stuff is just nauseating that goes out online. So
I don't know. I may start a ranch where I help lawyers rehabilitate after other marketing experiences, because that's about 99% of every conversation I have with a new prospect is like, well, let me tell you about how these guys did me dirty. So
maybe we're just telling on ourselves here
I
because we
mean,
each picked our own industry.
yeah. Okay. What's the biggest scam or kind of red herring that lawyers should steer clear of in this next year?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so let's go back to the AI thing. Like,
Yeah.
if you're getting a pitch and it's like AI is going to solve all your problems, you don't have to
Yeah.
work anymore because that's happening. That's coming down the pipe as
Automate
well.
your law firm,
That
automate the whole thing.
that's not a thing.
Yeah.
And I've been telling people this for years, which is like nobody wants to talk about managing their business. Nobody wants to have deep conversations about process management, but it's a non-starter if you don't do that. You got to understand and own your processes. You got to understand and own your technology in a real way. And there
Yeah.
is no like gift wrap solution. Like it's very similar to what I was just talking about, which is like, oh, do these 7 things and you'll make $1 million. Like that's not how it works. And it's the
Right.
same thing with like these AI tools. They're not a panacea.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Last question. Who's going to win the World Series?
I picked the Rangers last year, believe it or not.
I don't believe
And
you, but go ahead.
it's on a podcast. I picked the Rangers like 3 months before the season ended. It's out there. This year,
We'll have to
I am
fact
going to
check
say
that.
all right. Phillies are breaking through this year.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to say. Yep, Phillies.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe check back in a few months to see if that's accurate, but probably not. So
let's do it. Yeah, it's probably going to be wrong. Don't bet on that, but that's what I think.
Well, all right. I really appreciate your time. I think this was awesome. Really appreciate it. If you happen to be unfamiliar with Jarred, haven't looked him up through the course of this, check out Red Cave Legal. What's that URL for the folks at home?
redcavelegal.com. Pretty easy. So
easy.
Check it out.
Easy stuff. You might see him around at your state's CLEs. Lots of opportunities to see him on video. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. This was a pleasure.
Always.